Hello, welcome to Laughing Place Movie Club. I'm Alex. I'm joined today by Benji. And today we are discussing the brand new Hulu original, The Ultimate Playlist of Noise, directed by Bennett Lasseter. I think his name, yes, Bennett Lasseter. If that last name sounds familiar, he is, in fact, the son of John Lasseter, who I think needs no introduction. Now, the film, it's the first Hulu original movie of the new year of 2021. Benji, overall thoughts, what did you think?
No good.
No good.
Bad.
You did not like it. I wouldn't say I hated it, but it wasn't I didn't care for it overall. It was a lot more angsty than I prefer my teen dramas to be.
So we had Clouds, um, and that was based on a true story, and it was emotional, and you could go back and look. This is not based on a true story, which doesn't, these kind of movies don't have to be. But then it just was like kind of kept kicking him down, and just became unpleasant. The female love interest, I guess, for lack of a better word, just is not a good person. And they try to make her sympathetic, and I wouldn't say she's not sympathetic, but that doesn't give you excuses to do some of the things she does. And it just kind of became like a dirge. It just became unpleasant. It's not inspirational. It doesn't lift you up. It's just sad. It's not like, yeah, sure, he kind of learns a lesson at the end, but not really. He doesn't really make an impact on anyone.
I would disagree. I would disagree with you there. I think he does learn a profound lesson in the end, which is that your life can be happy if you choose to look at it differently. That's not saying that, there's not certain circumstances that you can't rise above. But, the main character, Marcus, his kind of favorite of his sensory inputs is sound. He's a person who lives with two sets of headphones in his ears, earbuds for ambience, and then bigger over the ear headphones for music. And, so being faced with losing his hearing, I would say who you see him as in the end of the film, he does go on a journey that really changes his outlook on life. Now, I do agree with you, and it, like you said, it doesn't need to be a true story, but Clouds, which we had earlier this year on Disney Plus, it had some similar beats. I mean, ultimately, both films are stories of a main character who is faced with a challenge and decides to spend their last amount of time with blank doing something they love. So in Clouds, it's making music. In this, it's recording sounds. Obviously, the making music one's a little more interesting as an audience than watching him go around recording sounds. And I will say, cinematically, they did do a pretty good job of keeping it interesting while he's traveling around, recording these things. But premise wise, nothing about Ultimate Playlist of Noise screams, hit life-changing movie. And I would even go back, like when I was a teenager, one of Mandy Moore's first, I think it was her first starring role, but not her first movie, which was Princess Diaries. But A Walk to Remember, which was based on the Nicholas Sparks novel, that was kind of a similar thing too. That was, to me at least, the first like bucket list movie that I saw, where it's a character with leukemia. She's going to be dying. A boy falls in love with her, in spite of all of that, and tries to help make sure that her last days are as awesome as possible by doing things like standing on the state line so she can be in two places at once, which was one of her bucket list things. This one, it's like, I want to record 100 soda cans being opened at the same time. Seems a little silly.
Well, it's also not a bucket list. I mean, he's not dying.
He's
and
not
not that losing. I mean, I'm not trying to begrudge losing your hearing, but you don't have in A Walk to Remember, you have this love build that you don't really have here. You have lust, you have sort of friendship maybe, but it doesn't really take enough time to get there. And it really doesn't, it doesn't really try and find the through line of the story, which is one thing if it was based on a true story, you're like, okay, a lot of things happen. But it's like, is it about him losing his hearing? Is it about him falling in love with this girl? Is it about him dealing with family issues? Is it? It's just kind of it ends up trying to be all things and ends up being nothing. And you know, this is this sort of Nicholas Sparks genre. Last Song is one that comes to mind. But I mean, those are fine, and we know what they are. But I feel that those do a better job of making you care. Like here, he's you want to even though they're dealing with tragedy, you still have to like him, and he kind of becomes unlikable. And then you don't see people who know him really interact a lot in this movie. He has this sort of stressed relationship with his mom, which causes him not to communicate with his mom, which makes, I think, walled off a big sort of plot in that, you can sometimes care about the children through the mom's eyes or parents' eyes. And, it ends up just becoming a tense conversation. And in the end, I will say it does redeem itself a little bit. They did, when interestingly, when he, loses his hearing, spoiler, and the sound goes off, and you can kind of try and see what that's like. So you see them, saying, not necessarily talking, but, having sounds that would normally come out, and you don't hear, and you can kind of see how he's struggling to not necessarily be miserable, but, at the same time, kind of still being a little sad. But it's the road to get there. Just, and his bucket list is sort of not even really, they don't spend enough time on that. Like, they go off on these crazy adventures, like, of being degenerates, but they don't spend a lot of time actually getting the sound. Like, they do that in montage.
They do things that are cool in theory, like sneaking into a closed bowling alley that's like an abandoned bowling alley. Like, that sounds fun, but it's not the kind of thing you should actually do. Same with, they sneak into a guy's swimming pool, and the liability that poor man could have gone through if one of them had gotten seriously hurt, which the kid does fall on his back. The main character, Marcus, does in fact get injured while there.
And I get this, let's do something crazy and get, and that's a wow, I'm doing something crazy. But like, they keep being stupid. I mean, it's one thing to do it once. They do it like pure, there's drinking while they're on a road trip, which just seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah, I would say teen comedies in general glamorize things you shouldn't be doing with alcohol.
Yeah, but it's just, and I'm just using it as an example. It's like, yeah, I get it, but that's like, it's basically his slow descent into like bad decisions. And you're like, it's like How to Be a Bad Influence. It's like the Breaking Bad of teen movies. And it's, I don't know. It just, I mean, there's so much happens back to back to back that you just like, you're just a punk. Like, this isn't you on some rite of passage. You know better. You're still doing it.
Yeah. Now, one thing I did want to talk about a little bit is you mentioned the mom in the film, and her performance actually is one of the things that I really that really stayed with me. The actress, I'm probably mispronouncing her last name, but Raya Kilstead, and she was in Home Alone 3 way back when as one of the 3 burglars in that film. So I think it's great that she's come a long way from that. She's also in A Teacher. But her performance I really loved. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Bonnie Hunt, who's the biggest name in the film. And I love her as an actress, and she does a great job as the doctor. And if they did any kind of like a press junket or anything like that, my like top question would be if Bonnie Hunt was in this as a favor to the Lasseter family, because I'm just assuming with all of her Pixar work that she and John Lasseter are probably pretty simpatico, and she's probably met, Bennett going all the way back to, I think A Bug's Life was her first Pixar film. So I was curious to know kind of the backstory about that, of how Bonnie Hunt ended up in what's ultimately a fairly small but important role in the film.
I didn't recognize her. I mean, maybe because it had nothing to do with, like, it's not a funny role. And
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting part for her to take because this is a drama. It's not a comedy. It's a small role. She could have been the mom. With when you've got a name like Bonnie Hunt, you would think you would put her in a bigger role. But yeah, that's Bonnie Hunt as the doctor in this, and I'd love to know the backstory about that.
yeah,
Um,
it's funny. I didn't realize that she was. This was directed by Bennett Lasseter when I first heard of it, and it's in many ways it's like the anti-Lasseter movie, like anti-John Lasseter movie, in that it doesn't have broad appeal. It doesn't play on sort of that, sort of what I would, classic Disney storytelling values. And not that that's how you should judge stories, because that's not the case. But it doesn't have. It's not as thought out in terms of structure, and live action films tend to not be, because
Well, and I was just about to say, I mean, the incubation method of a Pixar film or a Disney animated film, which is the kind of storytelling we're used to from John Lasseter, is very different from your typical live action film, where the director doesn't usually have that much involvement. They get the script, they can request some changes, but it's ultimately the writer who goes back and makes that happen. And it's not this hugely collaborative process to craft a story. Also, this is an independent film. Disney didn't make it. I have a feeling this was the kind of thing that was in the can and Hulu bought it. And I can see why Hulu was attracted to it, just because it is aimed at a teenage audience. But one of the things I will say for a film, with the name Playlist in the title, I was not a fan of most of the music in this movie. Like, in fact, some of the songs really grated on me, particularly the song that the brother Alex had recorded. That it's supposed to be this moment that's really deep and personal, and the song was really hard for me to listen to.
Yeah, it kind of felt like there were, for the topic matter, like the sound itself. I mean, even just sort of the recordings of the sounds and the
Mhm.
playing of the sounds wasn't as focused on as you would have thought.
What I did really appreciate is after he has his surgery and he comes back from that, having the no sound for a while, like having it just completely silent, I thought was a really cool choice. It kind of reminded me auditorially of what the Wizard of Oz does when Dorothy goes from sepia tone to color when she steps into Oz. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that's what really picks up when he gets back home. Like, and they play the tape, and he goes through the sound. He goes through his surgery, and they get, it fades to black as the anesthesia takes over, but then the song that's playing stops midway through. Like, that's when it starts to get cinematic.
Mm-hmm.
But it took a while to get there. I love Hulu too, most of the time.
But yeah, I mean, I would say I liked it. Well, no, I've seen it now twice. First time I saw it, I probably would have said I liked it. After seeing it again, I found more reasons to not like it, which is kind of putting it nicely. But I mean, you could do a lot worse than Ultimate Playlist of Noise, but there's so much better stuff on Hulu.
Well, and that's the thing is with the way things are, there's no reason to settle for mediocrity. I mean, if you want to have a cry movie, go watch Clouds on Disney Plus.
Yeah, well, Clouds like actually makes you cry. Like this has that one strong performance moment with the mom and him after he comes out of surgery, where or right before they go in, where they kind of have this moment of understanding because there's been information in the family that hasn't been fully disclosed, and he happens upon it, and that it's an important story to tell about mental health and suicide and things like that, but I didn't feel like they actually hit a message with it in the end.
Yeah,
like
well,
it was there to be there.
In the end, it just made it seem cruel. I think
Yeah.
that plot point, it wasn't. It didn't add except to just bring the character down further. Losing
Mhm.
your hearings, I don't say that, there's not people that in lives like just kind of keep getting kicked, but it just, for a fictional story, it just felt like, come on, this guy's lost. I mean, not only did he sort of have this losing his hearing, but in many ways loses his family, loses his girlfriend, loses his dreams. And then, oh, by the way, here's another thing that should scar you for life. It's just like, I don't know. It just felt like a little too much for something that's not based in any sort of truth. It just seems like that was a choice.
Mhm.
When you have a true story film, you go like, okay, here now. Granted, they take license, but you're like, okay, this is what happened, and this is the story they're going to tell. And this one, they decided to tell it this way, and I don't get it.
In some ways, I almost feel like they wanted to take left turns from what the predictable ending would be, if that makes sense. Like your predictable ending would be, he goes through his surgery and somehow they manage to save his hearing. The person that he's fallen in love with does end up being somebody that he can have a relationship with. His brother that he idolized, who he sees as a hero, is a hero. It's like they go through this film and just kind of try and undo all of those things that you expect to be there in the end, which I think is why it's so unsatisfying to watch anyway. I mean, La La Land is a great example of a film where you set up a romance that doesn't come to fruition, but there's a bigger takeaway. But this one, it just kind of felt unnecessary.
When he's going to lose his hearing because they started off with that, so it's not like you hope that they're wrong or that there's some weird.
I guess where I'm going with that is there was that 20th Century Studios movie that we watched. We did a movie club on earlier in the summer where the girl had terminal cancer and
Fault in Our Stars.
Fault in Our Stars. Thank you. Fault in Our Stars is one where the way the prologue started, because I feel like this took a few pages out of Fault in Our Stars notebook, the way that one started with the narration, you kind of expected it to be her from beyond telling her story, and then it flipped it a little bit. It had that twist. So I kind of felt like maybe that's where they were starting this one with, like maybe they were going to save his hearing in the end, because at times the film takes itself lightly, and then at other times it becomes very heavy, and that balance is not well played out either.
There's a good movie in here. It's just a little undercooked.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, it's not. This isn't a big budget movie with reshoots, and this isn't Endgame where they can tweak it, and I get that, but this is one where they maybe could have thought of a little bit more before they gave up.
Real quick, Ben, there's obviously a lot of ABC shows on Hulu. Do you have a favorite that you're really enjoying right now? Can be new or legacy. Just
well, I love like Legacy. It's not ABC, but Hulu has more. Yeah. But right now, I think just because in the time we're in, I've been really enjoying just some ABC game shows. The Hustler, The Chase, Celebrity Wheel of Fortune. I think Millionaire are currently the ones that are currently going. Big Sky 2, that's coming up soon, coming back if you want to catch up. All the episodes are on Hulu now. That's sort of ABC's big drama show right now. And then the comedies are back, the ABC comedies. We watched Call Your Mother.
Yeah.
Which is, I want to say it's a great show, but it's got a dog, so
It's got a dog. Yeah, it's okay so far based on the one episode that we've seen. I am hoping it gets better because I love Kira Sedgwick, and I did enjoy. I like the premise. There's just a couple. I would say there's one tertiary character that really grates on me that the show would be a lot better without that character. And then I would also add to that Supermarket Sweeps is my favorite game show on ABC. And I was going to mention Big Sky. I'm excited to find out what's happening with those missing girls when that comes back.
So next week we've got another Hulu movie, which you've actually already reviewed.
I have reviewed, and you and I saw, because this is like Hamilton. This is a filmed version of a show that played for a while in New York. And so Benji and I actually got to go to the actual show, and then I've already reviewed the film, but that's Derek Delgadio's In and of Itself, which is directed by Frank Oz, and the film is produced by Stephen Colbert and his wife, and the show itself was produced by Neil Patrick Harris. So that is a really cool experience. I highly recommend that. That comes on Hulu this Friday, and we'll be doing that movie club next Monday.
Yeah, and then just to give you guys a little heads up, if you want to catch up with us, after that we got Mary Poppins Returns.
Yeah.
And then on February 8th, the new 30 for 30, Al Davis versus the NFL.
Cool.
So, anything else before we go?
No, I think we've given Ultimate Playlist of Noise a fair beating, and we've got Barely Necessities tomorrow, and Disney Trivia Live with Doobie and Gideon. Barely Necessities with Rebecca and Becca.
And then at 9 a.m., Jeremiah will be live from Disney's Animal Kingdom. And at 1 o'clock, we're gonna because of the holiday, we're gonna have a special edition of Disney Parks Talk Live. So we got 4 live streams tomorrow. So watch one of them at least.
Cool. I don't think I'm in any of those, but I'll definitely.
No, I'm in none of those.
Wow.
And that's okay.
Fun.
Because I have a feeling tomorrow's going to be a very busy day.
Yeah. All right.
Well, are you allowed to talk about what you're doing tomorrow? Is that under?
I know I was allowed to say I saw 30 minutes of Raya and the Last Dragon. Tomorrow is going to be all press day for Raya and the Last Dragon. I won't get to see the whole movie for a little bit longer, but I've seen 30 minutes, and you can go to Laughing Place's Twitter account at laughing_place. It was put up yesterday, so you'd have to just scroll back to yesterday, but I posted a thread on my initial thoughts of Raya and the Last Dragon, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot more about it from our friends at Walt Disney Animation Studios.
I'm looking forward to you reminding me. Did you like it?
I loved the footage I saw. Yeah, okay. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Very much reminded me of kind of the spirit of Moana. I don't think it's a musical, and but it had a really cool score, which felt final. So I feel like they've already done the final score. A lot of the times at these early press days, they haven't scored the film yet. And the other thing I would say is it reminded me a little bit of Studio Ghibli's Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. So if you are a fan of Studio Ghibli, I think you're really going to enjoy this. It feels a little bit different from what Disney Animation has put out recently, not in the sense that it's not a musical, because neither was Big Hero 6 or Zootopia or Ralph Breaks the Internet and Wreck-It Ralph, but it feels much more action heavy than those were. It feels like a martial arts movie fantasy from Disney.
Yeah, it's interesting because usually these things happen about 3 months before the movie comes out, give or take. This one's happening 6 weeks.
Yeah, so it felt to me like the music wasn't anything I recognized. And usually when they're using temp music, they're borrowing from other films, and you can be like, oh, I know this score from yada yada. And this felt new and original, and it all fit really well.
Okay, well, thanks so much, Alex, and join the gang tomorrow at 9, 1, 4. And 7:30.
All right. Have a great night. Good night, everybody.